Carlos Nelson with Cascade Media, and tonight we've got two of our state reps from the opposite end of the Missouri. We got one out of St. Louis, and my home piece right here out of Kansas City, Missouri. Who do we have here?
Hey, everybody. State Representative Ashley Bland Manlove, here in Kansas City, representing the 26th District, which, if you're familiar from the town, is 71st Street to 99th, Homes, all the way west to Cerner, or east to Cerner. So, pleasure to be here. And my counterpart.
Hi, everybody. I am LaKeySha Bosley, representing the 79th District in the St. Louis, Missouri. You know, I have to do it. It has been an honor to serve for the last 5 years. And if you're familiar with St. Louis area, I feel like I have the greatest district in all of the state. No offense, counterpart. But you know, they've since redistricting, my district has changed. I do have North St. Louis at 70 and Grand, and then I come all the way back south to Tower Grove Park, and I go as far east to Kings Highway, and then I come back north all the way downtown to 22nd Street next to the Veterans Memorial.
All right, let's get where the tire meets the road, ladies.
Yes.
The last time y'all were on the show, I think I had Manlove run it down first. So now, Bosley, we want you to run down how you see your district, what your platform is for 2023, 2024, and some of the challenges that you face at the state level. I think you're a Democrat. With the overwhelming state people, Republicans. Run it on down.
Well, you know, I appreciate the question. You know, we can have the conversation all day about what's wrong and what is happening in this country. So I'll only pick on three things because I know we're all gonna get into it a little bit later. So one of the challenges that I've been facing in my district is voter turnout. You know, that's been one of the biggest challenges in my district: voter turnout, access to healthcare, and just criminal justice reform all across the board. So I have the honor of having a very diverse district where I have affluent pockets of communities and neighborhoods. And then in certain areas, they are some of my poorer communities. And I grew up in one of those communities in Hyde Park. Has been there my entire life and just recently moved to Midtown, which is the old Blue Myers, which isn't far off from what we're talking about in the first place. So when we're having these conversations on the House floor about representation and what it looks like to make sure that we get our people and our communities engaged, a lot of my counterparts and my colleagues on the other side of the aisle who are from rural communities, who may not necessarily agree with the perspective because they've never lived it. And we have to consistently fight for our existence. We have to fight for voting rights. We have to fight for just equal rights all across the board. We're seeing right now what's happening with the Supreme Court and how all of these rulings are coming down and ultimately affecting marginalized communities and people. It's going to always be a struggle. It doesn't have to be, but it's going to be because you're going to have diversity wherever you go. So being a part of the legislature, and I say this all the time, being a minority on top of a minority on top of a minority in the legislature is not the easiest of tasks. You know, me and my colleague here, we got called each other's names for about an entire year, 2 years of us being in the legislature. We're completely different in aesthetic in all of the ways, but I was called Ashley and she was called me. And that just goes to show you that it's not an issue of them wanting to understand or certain people wanting to understand, but them actually having the desire to be a part of that process and part of that growth. I hope that makes sense.
Makes all the sense in the world. we're going to hit on some other things. I want to let Representative Manlove run it on down, Ashley.
Well, hey everybody. So, like Representative Bosley said, we had redistricting, which happens every 10 years when we do the census, which is why it's so important for you to open your door or fill out that application. Because literally, they like to say, if you don't do politics, it'll do you. Mm-hmm. And right now we're seeing that in full bloom. Rep Bosley said, this is hard work, and it is, but that's because politics is like a garden. And when you have a garden in your backyard, you are in that garden every day, summer, fall, winter, spring, you know what I mean? And right now, we're only tending our gardens in the spring. Mm-hmm. So the rest of that time, it's overgrown, there's weeds, there's rabbits, it's going haywire because we're not paying attention to that garden. Now, if we do decide to buckle down and pay attention to that garden every day, then it gets therapeutic to work in your garden. And if we paid attention to politics every day, our healthcare would get better. Our education systems would get better. Our roads would get better. All of those things that are actually the things that our wages would get better. Our, working rights would get better. Those things that are actually stressing us out, if we paid attention, those would be working form. So, per usual, it's my job to try to make that understanding, even for people who are in the legislature, because some of them don't understand because they came in on a bandwagon or on somebody else's tailcoat, so they don't even know really what's going on, or they don't understand the depth of there are no disparities in our community. There is disinvestment in our community. Disparity means there's something wrong and you don't know how to fix it. Or we definitely know how to fix it and we have solutions. Now, are people going to listen? Are people going to get behind us and pay attention? Those are the things that we're talking about right now. In my old district, it went Cleaver 2 to 99th Homes to Prospect. And there were 3 grocery stores for 36,000 people. They actually took out a grocery store and put in a white gym. But the question is, how are you going to go to that gym if you have no nutrition in your body? Now they have changed my district. And like I said, it went from running north to south to east to west, same rectangle. And there's still 2 grocery stores for 36,000 people. Well, these are also very high crime areas. Well, why is there high crime? Because there's no jobs, there's no investment, and there's no nutrition. So what are these children going to do with their spare time? The Christians always say, an idle mind is the devil playground. Well, there's no investment there. So we're going to keep seeing these same problems. And I was actually just watching a documentary, and Carlos, before the call started, you and I were talking about the diaspora and how this is happening everywhere. This is not a Missouri thing. This is diaspora thing. And even in Brazil, they are fighting against police brutality. In France, they are fighting right now against police brutality because they was tired because the police killed one too many Black men. So we have to engage. And when we are able to finally release and get out of survival mode, we'll finally thrive.
All right. I'm going to change the tenor and the subject of the conversation. You're not from here, Bosley, but she is. Do you remember when Sprint Center and they were saying that we have to have an anchor tenant to make this center work? We have to have a professional basketball team, a professional hockey team.
Yes, we were supposed to get the Oklahoma Thunder.
Right,
that's why we built the team up with the Sprint Center.
And everybody swore by that. But new thinking and letting somebody else have the floor. They put things together and used the arena in a different way than previous, and was one of the top grossing arenas. All right, now, bringing the conversation full circle. All of the problems that we have nobody wants to listen to what really the solution is.
Mm.
There are few people who are listening to the solution.
Problems, and you have talked about it, is media. You cannot connect with your community unless you're plugged into your community.
Absolutely.
And when it comes to Black media, it's not supported, like Cascade Media Group and what have you. How you gonna have a Black organization and they're not supporting, and whatever they doing, sending it to a company like Cascade? How are you gonna have an NAACP or Urban League or your urban high schools where you come up in a Eurocentric world and they own everything? They own 100% of all forms of media. So all the media that your community is really getting that is sticking is from their outlets.
Mm-hmm.
And so you need your community behind you in the ballot box.
Mm-hmm.
But Manlove touched on it. You got to tend your garden 12 months a year.
Mm-hmm.
You can't just wait until June and say, oh, we want tomatoes.
Mm-hmm.
And when it comes to making investment, this is just my experience. I'll be 72. Minorities, most Black people do not want to put no money down on anything out their own pocket. And these are problems that we have to solve along with the overall problem. And last,
do they have the capital to? Is
our
more the
infrastructure
question.
has fallen apart due to the Black males being taken out of the home since the 70s.
Well, it's due to desegregation,
right,
but that's a whole nother
that,
topic.
The drugs, our people work. You didn't have to have an education to work at the car plant, the meat pay, and you got good job, good pay.
Yeah, and everybody in the community.
The drugs and all of that came, but we don't have nobody to blame but ourselves, because we let these people take over our school boards because we were asleep, not tending the garden.
Well, we were petrified, actually, because if you look at, so there's emancipation and then Reconstruction right after that. And during Reconstruction, Blacks took over, especially in the South where we were. So when we got registered, we finally got registered to vote, voting at 90%, most legislatures, especially in the South, having over 50% Black bodies. But then, per usual, white race riots scared us, tortured us, killed us,
destroyed communities,
battered us back down. And then once you started getting, lynched again, then nobody wants to show up because that's scary and you're in survival mode at that point. So therefore, whites took back over. But then once they took back over, then they implemented grandfather laws and all this kind of stuff that therefore stifled us more. So that part wasn't our fault per se, but and so then those laws are grandfathered in, which then disinvest in public education, voting rights, blah, 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 women's rights, all of those human rights that we had in, which then further compacts us into ghettos, blah, 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 where we are again in survival mode. Then we have the rise up of the 60s and 70s, where again, all of our leaders are assassinated and we are killed and we are tortured and beat again. So therefore we back down again because everybody was scared to step up after all of our leaders had been killed. So, and the Black men would not let the Black women step up who were asking to. So therefore we slid all the way back down again. Then you get hit with like war on drugs and Reagan, and because again, we let it slip out of our fingers. So it's very much this ebb and flow. And then it happened again with Obama, But again, with Obama, nobody voted in those previous elections to give him the House and the Senate
legislature,
so that he could do what he wanted. And with media, there has been a lot of attention on things. And so people stopped caring about why and the reason that we're there and started focusing on themselves. And so things just got very, very dark and selfish. Hence why you have your quote unquote Democrats, Christian cinema standing up against everything. That's why you have Cori Bush standing up against everything. So it's part us, it's part the system, but it's a whole lot of us not being a community anymore and pushing through even when we have been fought against and latching on to that community, and instead intentionally being dispersed and displaced and put in a system of distrust to where we don't even trust ourselves. And now we are seeing complete repercussions of that.
Well, and then there was also a point made about us not wanting to put our own money into things. That's not true. We don't have the money to put into things.
Let me cut you off on that. Let me cut you off on that.
Now let me finish, because as a community, the buying power that we have together, we absolutely have the buying power. We can put the resources in there. We can invest. But when the banks consistently redline us while they say that they don't, but we know they do currently, why do we have to put our own capital in? Why can't we go to the bank and acquire a loan for that bank to then allow us and borrow and having borrowing power to be able to put their money up instead of our own? We should be able to understand the difference between trust and creating intergenerational wealth instead of just us figuring out how to get a property for a house and then not even have the structure or the infrastructure to be able to build from just that moment to creating businesses within a community that actually serve our community. We weren't scared. I'm here to tell you, and I know Representative Bland Manlove is here to tell you, we aren't scared anymore. We don't mind being the martyrs. We don't mind being in the trenches, making the things happen and saying the things that you don't say out loud. And the reason being is because we've seen what happens when we don't. We see what happens when our fathers and our grandmothers, when they stood up and they got knocked back down, but then they stood up again. We can't continue with the same old cycle.
I am not, you're describing the cycle. Both of y'all have described the cycle and we all know that. I'm in the solutions. I talked about a solution, but that just went over everybody's head. You cannot do anything until you can plug in with your community. McDonald's, #1 hamburger place on the planet. They advertise. Taco Bell, they advertise. They say new taco deal, same funky taco, different advertisement. And when you are not trying to plug into your community through your sources, 50 years ago, when I was a young man in my 20s, you had Ebony in your home. You had Jet Magazine, Johnson Public. What the things you're talking about, I lived through, and what I see, not what you see. I've seen Black people graduate from Black universities. All right, get in the door with master's programs from these other universities, start to rise up economically, educationally, and what did they do? They moved out their neighborhoods and left the bottom 3/4 of our community that are in poverty and drug-ridden education and all of that. And then don't want to plug in. I'm talking about experience. I deal with politicians, businessmen. When you say, let's start from scratch. Here in Kansas City, Black contractors, they say, we don't have no workforce. Well, what did you do to invest in the workforce?
Right.
It's not good enough to say, well, the union or this and that. My great-grandfather said, hey, when Master give us all, we're going to work together to make this happen with our own. And that type of feeling, because of economics and you're living in the matrix, that's where young leadership like yourself come in, you and Manlove. No matter who's leading the party, how can you talk about making a change and you're not plugged into your entire community?
Well, and to your point, it takes a village. It takes you to plug into other people and other people to make sure that you stay plugged in. It takes all of us. And I think that's what we were saying, is that this is a community buy-in. And the community has been scared and has been tortured and has been said, oh, if you gather in large quantities and large numbers, they don't say that that's peaceful. They say that that is an agitated protest. You are indeed, they called the insurrectionists. They said that those were they were peaceful protesters, and they broke into the Capitol building and defaced what democracy looks like for this country in only a few hours, not even 24 hours. We're talking about 3-4 hours. They destroyed the premise of what this country was supposed to be built on.
Look at that, what you just said. The news reported that. If you go to my channel and look under commentary, the night of that, I came on and I said, they're reporting this. If this was Black people, there'd be dead bodies. This is an insurrection. The news didn't come out with that for about 10 hours. They tried to paint it and that's the importance of you having and using your own Black media like Cascade, because everything that you're being fed by the major media doesn't have anything to do with you most of the time.
Everything's got to be FUBU, for us, by us, right?
Right, and I'm saying, how can you do that when you don't support it financially, you don't support it spiritually, and then most people don't even want to talk about it. It's like white people don't want to talk about all the atrocities that they did. Well, it wasn't me. It's not like they sleep. They know what's going on. Right. And it's willful with us, and it's willful with us not to talk about it and then address it. Whether we in the school, politics, or garbage people, that, hey, we need to stick together and we need to come together with our community, that village. And until that mindset is not just talked about and implemented, and right now,
I disagree that we don't talk about it
from scratch almost, because the people my age that's been running things, they've lost their way. The dollar is their God.
I was just about to say that. I think that there are a lot of young people, particularly in our millennial age group, who are moving back home. I know like 6 of them that I can think of right now who have moved back into a Black neighborhood or their old neighborhood. And their children are going to public schools, maybe a charter, but whatever, that's whatever. But their children are going to public schools, and they are reinvesting. A lot of them are opening up their own businesses, which is direct money back into our community. So yeah, I do think that there was in the age of you've got to go to college to get a degree and move up in the world, I think that there was a lot of Black flight as well, because that's what the white people told us was better. And we followed that. And now a lot of us are seeing that, no, a lot of the stuff that they have been feeding us since the 40s. There's several brands that started off as skin bleaching brands and are now regular household brands or cleaning brands. So, and a lot of us are getting back to holistic eating. A lot of us are getting back to nutrition. A lot of us are getting back to spirituality, and a lot of us are getting back to community, and understanding the importance of that and the reinvestment in our community. And it does start with us.
I like that. You two, I love you two. I'm serious, because y'all are the future. Mr. Nelson is the past. And you only know what you know, and you grow. The last time I talked to you, Bosley, you're not the same person. Last time I talked to you, Manlove, but people will having their mind sees the same. No, you've changed your thoughts, you know, and that becomes a major problem in us coming together, these personalities.
I mean, it's bigger than just personalities. And, you know, to your point and to Manlove's point, like it's important for us to have the conversations. But to your point, even when we are uncomfortable having the conversations, we're now in a place of where we are comfortable having the uncomfortable conversations. We don't mind having and addressing the elephant in the room. And we're going to pick the elephant apart from the trunk to the tusk, to the feet, to the back, to the high, to the inside. Like we're gonna have the real conversation, and the solution starts with us doing our part. It starts with us saying what needs. Speaking truth to power didn't always just mean standing up and fighting and just saying something egregious. Speaking truth to power just means telling the simple truth and addressing the facts. And we've got to get back to that too, and addressing pure facts, not speculation, not opinion. We've got to get back. My father always says, you never know where you're going to go until you know where you've been. And we've got to get back to actually teaching our history and understanding our history. And that is honestly getting us back to the point where Representative Manlove just says, we're going back to nutrition. We're going back to holistic eating. I mean, I clean with lemons and oranges and water and white vinegar. Like, and instead of using the Mr. Cleans and the Fabuloso and burning it in a pot and putting all those fumes in our hair that ultimately affects just my physiology all the way through. So it's important for us to have the uncomfortable conversations, but everybody can't come to the table though until they're ready. You can't force people, like my father says, you could take a horse to water, but you can't force them to drink. So we just have to have the conversations with like-minded people and bring our people along as they get to the place of wanting to learn. I'm not teaching somebody who doesn't want to learn, because then I'll end up beating myself upside the head trying to pour information. I'll put it out there, and it's up to anybody else to pick it up.
Manlove, you got 3 minutes for the floor. Run it down.
So of course, session is over. We've got through vetoes. We've got bills that have passed. One really detrimental bill got struck down. There's always a public safety bill that is always hit and miss. And Representative Bosley and I worked on some doula training money a couple of years ago, when we've been able to sustain that in the budget. And this year, Bosley got a policy passed that we've been working on for a minute. So tell them about that, Bosley.
So, you know, we've been having a conversation about wrongful convictions and restitution across the state, and making sure that we give those people who have been wronged by the system and by the state. And it's important that we're having this conversation about the systematic impact and the systematic depression and racism, and not just disparities, disinvestments into those individuals, and trying to restore them and make them whole. So in that big public safety bill, we had the compensation language, and the governor struck it down, simply saying that the state shouldn't have to pay. The state shouldn't have to pay when they were the ones who pretty much did the wrong. And
I was talking about fourth trimester.
Oh, fourth trimester. Sorry, girl. I went into two other things. I was ready for all of it.
But a good thing that happened.
It is, but we'll work through it. So the fourth trimester, most people know it as postpartum, which is now being deemed and coined in medical terms of the fourth trimester. We got this bill passed. We've been working on this bill for 5 years, and to God be the glory, we got it passed, where now we are giving women who are under Medicaid and private insurance the extension from 3 months of postpartum care all the way through to 1 year. Of course, we want to do more, but this 1 year is important, because that's what we see with the infant and maternal mortality rate across the state, where it is between the time from the postpartum ending of a pregnancy all the way through that 1 year, where we are seeing a higher rate of deaths, especially in Black and brown women. And I say this all the time, you know, I was scared, and I still am scared most times, to have a child here in Missouri because of the maternal mortality rate, and how it is definitely connected to Black and brown communities because we don't have access to adequate health care. Because to your point, we don't have doctors who look like us coming back to those communities. And now we are starting to see the influx of doctors coming back home. So that was a great bill to have passed. I'm excited about it. And of course, now me representing the Blend Manlove, Jamie Johnson, and a few other people are now working on putting doulas into that conversation and midwives. So if you want to take that away, Bert,
All right, we about to close out. We got about 2 minutes left, ladies. Let me smile for them one time.
yes, shut the grill. Put the grill on them.
Hey, Bosley, when you coming up on this end of the spectrum up here to Kansas City, get some of this barbecue? Stop fooling around with that nasty stuff down there in the loop.
Hey, did you not see there is a magazine article that was put out nationally, by the way,
fake news.
that says St. Louis has the best barbecue.
Fake news.
So
Hey, come on, y'all. Hey,
you know,
Fake news.
You sound like y'all been drinking that Irish Rose or that.
No, that's that pollution in their water. Daggone.
Yeah.
well, we got the best water in the entire country, so I don't know what y'all
All right.
talking about.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson.
You gotta get her up here, and when you get her up here, I'm gonna take both of y'all to dinner down there where us black folks eat at Sorry's.
Oh, I love it. I love to spend my money with black folks.
I'm really looking forward to meeting you. And as my partner, I like to make him mad all the time. Jim Watts, when he's on the show, he always closes with this old jackleg stuff. It was a plum-pleasing pleasure having you on the show. I'll be like, Jim, cut out all the niceties. But as we always say in closing, when you invest in your community, you're really just investing in yourself. Good night.
The program is brought to you by the Kansas City Business Association.